Okay, I'm Manish from NXP and I'm part of the NXP India management team. First of all, thank you for connecting with us on this very innovative platform called NXP Campus Connect program. Before jumping on to this program, I want to share few, useful information to my dear students. We are running this NXP Campus Connect program, 2 sessions every month, first Tuesday and the third Tuesday every month. On first Tuesday, basically, we are sharing the innovative topics from VLSI technology. On third Tuesday every month, generally, we are connecting with the system engineering topic. Just to give you a brief glimpse of what NXP India is, as on today, we are operating from 4 locations. The Noida, generally, here we are driving automotive application based SoC design and IP design. Bangalore is our headquarter, and here we have, mostly software engineers, SoC designers and all. And from Bangalore, we are, working on different, application areas, UWB, payment gateway, NFCs, part of the automotive and several other applications. Hyderabad is our one of the location from where we are basically driving the 5G solutions and other communication related customer enablement infrastructure. The fourth one is the Pune. From Pune, basically, we are driving mainly the communication infrastructure, which is, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and a lot of other, SerDes, whatever you are talking about related to communication. We have the complete infrastructure, and it's not just the IP design or the SoC design, the integrated designs plus the, validation, software enablement, and everything from there. So this way we are, placed in India, and Hitesh Garg is our, innovative young country head. He is VP and country head for India. And NXP India management team is, very committed to support college students, universities, and we are also active in a lot of universities across India. IGT2 is very important. Not just with respect to the talent, but also, we are getting diversity from there. And, nowadays diversity is a critical goal for each and every organization across the world, not just in India. So with this thought, thank you once again for giving us an opportunity to collaborate with you to host this session. And today's session is very, very important. Before jumping on to this today's session, I want to invite HOD ma'am to say a few words about this program.
Good afternoon, team NXP and respected resource persons. I welcome all the participants, resource persons present here. Just a few lines about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity at IGDTU, I think it is not new. And I am having certain MOUs with a Forensic Science Lab and Central Forensic Science Lab, Chandigarh. And we are our team that is being associated with SOTIN, I think a Computer Emergency Response Team of India. And we are actively participating in daily police events. I mean to say our students have been doing some sorts of assistance to the Delhi police for forensics areas. And students are also being invited to join in other scientific and cybersecurity events. And we recently awarded 2 projects, one from NetApps regarding how to detect a ransomware pattern. We got a consultancy project. And also the Department of IT particularly has also awarded with 1 project from Central Forensic Science Lab. Therefore, cybersecurity, even if we have been one of the participating institute of information security education awareness program by Ministry of IT, we have been funded, and more than 300 students being trained, and more than 120, I think, police officers in the rank of inspectors and above, they have been trained by our team of cybersecurity. And particularly, so far as the academic requirement is concerned, there is a must for 2 topics. One is disaster management, and cybersecurity by the UGC, where IGDTU is compliant with. And particularly as we navigate the digital landscape, we find ourselves facing unprecedented challenges where the very technologies that empower us also expose us to new threats. The induction of IoT and new technologies, particularly the topic is very new to us, cybersecurity for road vehicles. I think interconnected world, we are witnessing a digital revolution where emerging technologies such as AI and IoT, blockchain, quantum computing are reshaping the way we live, we work, and we communicate. These advancements bring immense opportunities, but they also introduce novel risks that demand our attention and expertise. Cybersecurity is no longer a concern limited to the academic departments. It is shared responsibility that cut across industries and society as a whole. With the rise of sophisticated cyber threats, including ransomware, data breaches, and nationwide cyber espionage, collaboration of knowledge sharing have never been more crucial. Our ability to protect sensitive information, critical infrastructure, and individual privacy hinges upon our collective vigilance and expertise. I hope that this expert talk by the NXP experts on the area of cybersecurity definitely enlighten to our young students. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. Yes, cybersecurity is having, wide variety of applications. You are doing a lot of work with respect to the network cybersecurity. Today's topic is, cybersecurity for automotive, and recently the automotive community basically adopted the ISO 21434 standards, and how those are things, applicable not just for automotive, but also for the embedded systems. So today we have Christian, which is, visible on the screen. He is part of NXP Romania. He is our expert on cybersecurity in automotives. He is having, our expert as well as, a principal engineer working in several companies. Maybe he will introduce himself. He is our, known expert in this area, and he is driving cybersecurity in automotive with respect to the firmware implementations. So, Christian, welcome to this platform. A lot of students are visible. It's not just, students with physical available here, but also a lot of guys online. The some university students plus, NXP employees are also attending this session. So once again, welcome and thanks a lot for all your efforts. Over to you, Christian. A brief introduction first from your side, and then, jump on to your topic.
For sure. So thank you, Manish. Hello, guys. Warm greetings from the other side of the world. As Manish mentioned, my name is Christian, and I am cybersecurity engineer within NXP Semiconductors Bucharest branch. And today we're gonna have a presentation where we will be trying to I will be starting with the basics. So we'll be trying to demystify a little bit what cybersecurity is, because it comes in a lot of flavors. Well, everybody has some hints what it is and what it does, but we will dive into its very basics, and then also dive into the ISO 21434, which is cybersecurity specific for road vehicles, where some particularities apply. So we're not talking anymore maybe edge or just networks, but we will be talking an entire development and production chain. Please tell me if you see my screen, because I'm gonna start sharing. Do you see
go
my
ahead, Christian. Yes, everything is perfect. Go ahead.
Superb. So guys, let's see what we're gonna cover today. So as I said, we're gonna start with the basics of cybersecurity. We'll be discussing definition, assets, cybersecurity attributes, and risk mitigations. These are core concepts with which we work. And then we dive into ISO 11434 standard, where we will be discussing about context and scope. Product development and supply chain aspects, which are very important and a little bit particular to the vehicle development. So starting with the basics. let's have a look here to a very simple statement coming from National Institute of Standardization and Technology. So these guys are saying the following stuff. They say cybersecurity is the prevention of damage to, protection of, and restoration of computers, electronic communication systems, electronic communication services, wire communication, and electronic communication, including information contained therein, to ensure the availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. There are several definitions of cybersecurity, but I've taken this one because by analyzing it, we will dive into the basic concepts of cybersecurity. So let's, if we have a look at the highlighted words, let's dive a little bit into that. So, as you probably know, general security is about protecting asset being an object, asset being money, asset being a person. When you talk about cybersecurity, the asset is invariably it's the information or data, which may occur in various digital formats. It can be an account number, it can be a password, it doesn't matter. It's an information. It is not an object, it is not substantial, you cannot hold it in your hands. And this information, as you see, it's either stationary, meaning it is stored, contained on a certain environment, be it a hard drive, doesn't matter, a memory stick, a secure environment, or it is flowing, meaning it exchanges well, residence. It goes from one point to another. It is flowing in the form of communication. Yeah? Then, if we turn our attention to the next highlighted words, availability, integrity, authenticity, and confidentiality. These are nothing more, nothing less than the cybersecurity attributes of assets. So it is to say an asset is cybersecurity relevant if it manifests at least one of these attributes. So availability, meaning it needs to be available at the moment that we need this information or data. Integrity, it means that this asset must be in its original unaltered form. It needs not, or it must not be modified. Authenticity, the asset must originate from its source of origin that it is claimed. So if it's claimed that it comes from a certain actor, it needs to come from this actor. If this authenticity is compromised, then it's a problem. Confidentiality, and this is probably the attribute that most of you are already aware of, it's when the asset needs to be known only to the authorized parties. Maybe the guy that is originating it and the guy to which it is destined. Nothing more, nothing less. And one which is maybe not so obvious, called non-repudiation. It means that the origins, the asset's origin may not be negated by the origin. So whomever issued an asset cannot claim later on that this asset was not issued by him. So then we're having assets, we're having attributes. Bad things may happen to them, and then cybersecurity, it's all about mitigation. So in cybersecurity, we never say that we completely removed a risk. This is impossible. The most we can say is, well, we removed the known risk considering the known attack capabilities. But rather we use the word mitigated, which means the risk is currently brought to an acceptable value, a value that is that can be worked with. There are several mitigation strategies. Probably us as engineers are most used to applying countermeasures, which are technical in nature, depending on what we are trying to achieve. But there are a lot of other strategies besides countermeasure, um, which are more lawyer in nature, and we will debate that later on in this presentation. So as you see there, prevention, protection, restoration are risk mitigation strategies. Okay, now that we established the basics, let's see how ISO 21434, which is a standard for cybersecurity in the context of road vehicle, norms this action. So a little bit of history, although cybersecurity is not something, well, it seems to be new and it is a little bit of a buzzword, although security and cybersecurity manifested in different forms since quite a while. It only recently penetrated the world of vehicles. As the vehicles got more and more connected, not to mention the more recent self-driving ones, with more software inside, with more electronics, they became uh, a larger vulnerability, and this had to be addressed, especially since um, there was an exponentially increasing number of attacks over vehicles in the past years. So this happened or started with UNECE authority, which issued, it is called UNR 155, document which relates to the need that OEMs implement and maintain a cybersecurity management system. And this cybersecurity management system is very well modeled and covered by the standard ISO 14434. This is why nowadays this standard is broadly accepted and very widely spread. Although it started in Europe and US, Japanese, Korean manufacturers, even Chinese manufacturers adopted it. Most probable also Indian manufacturers, which have also branches in Europe, adopted it as well. What is this standard about? So this standard covers many flavors of cybersecurity that you probably did not even consider in the beginning, but they are cybersecurity relevant nonetheless. So in the first aspects, we can discuss about overall cybersecurity management at organizational level or governance level. This is this possible falls into what you are already used to when it comes to having networks protected or terminals or such as various laptops and so on and so forth. This part is covered by overall cybersecurity management. Then we are having project-dependent cybersecurity management. In here, it is covering aspects regarding the development of an individual product that will go into the vehicle. From its original phases of concept, going into production and past production, so in the life cycle on the streets, up to the moment it is discarded or not useful anymore. Additionally, there are aspects regarding continuous cybersecurity activities. They also happen mostly at the governance level, but they involve proactively scanning the world, um, scanning for incidents that occurred in products similar such as the one you're developing, in the search of discovering vulnerabilities before they impact you or your product. And additionally, the last chapter, 15, which is the most important, and it is always the root of all cybersecurity, relevant products, is threat analysis and risk assessment method. This is a method by which you would be able to analyze your system, discover what could happen to it, and later on decide on the mitigation strategies in order to, well, at least reduce the risk of bad things happening. So let's cover a little bit of product development. Well, maybe it is not obvious when you consider the environment of networks, computer networks, and so on and so forth. But when you're talking vehicles, there are a lot of stages which are very different in nature, each one with its own challenge. And this standard addresses all of them. For each vehicle or each part of a vehicle, you start with a concept where you design what you intend to achieve or to produce. Then you would be having a development within engineering or R&D centers where this product, so the concept is developed. Once the concept is matured and ready for production, it will go into production. In here, we're talking software, hardware, and software-hardware components, so together. Then you will be having post-production, meaning so production is finished, component or vehicle is put on the field, sold to a person, to an owner. This this owner operates the vehicle more or less according to the expectation, because once it's a owner, he can do a lot of stuff with the vehicle that he owns. Some actions may put him at risk, although he does not know it. There are some maintenance aspects where these vehicles needs to be kept up to date, maybe with some over-the-air updates and so on and so forth. And later on, when this life cycle ends, this vehicle will be scrapped, or the component will be scrapped, and this phase is called decommissioning. And even this phase in itself may require special action. So it is to say, well, imagine what would happen if you would discard maybe your credit card that it still holds some data on it. Would you simply throw it in the recycle bin? Most probably not. You will destroy it, you will cut it, or you'll do something with it. So you see, even if in the act of throwing away, we need to make it a conscious decision and take the appropriate action so that we keep the data safe after decommissioning. Okay, so we said everything starts with the product creation. And for people working in automotive business, everybody is very familiar with the V-cycle development. It's a cycle of development where you are starting from a high abstraction layer. Then you refine the requirements down to very detailed. Then you integrate those implementation or components or subcomponents, and later on you will be performing a number of tests, first at component level, then at integration level, and later on at vehicle level, where everything is aggregated. As per cybersecurity, ISO 14434 does not require a different development cycle, but instead it interleaves itself with the already defined stages of the V-cycle development. Meaning, at each stage, when you are taking your actions for the sake of the development, if the product is cybersecurity relevant, you will be having some additional actions to perform in order to make to engineer cybersecurity from the beginning, so that you have, let's say, cybersecurity by design. And every V-cycle development starts with a concept phase. And when we are considering cybersecurity, we need to pay attention to several aspects. So first of all, we need to clearly make a statement: what is our item in focus? What we are trying to develop here? What are its boundaries? And when I say boundaries, I'm not thinking exclusively physical boundaries like a plastic or metal housing. The boundaries contain also interfaces. It needs to be very clear what interfaces are in the scope of the development, or maybe belong to the vehicle or to the components where we will integrate later on. Once we have our clear item definition, then it's okay to perform a threat analysis risk assessment on it, a TARA shortly. Because we have defined our item, we have defined the purpose of our item, we have defined the interfaces and the environment where this item is going to work, we will know through the analysis what are the threats that can occur, what is the impact if such a threat manifests successfully. So we are getting some damage, so we will gonna impact somewhere in the overall functionality. And then reverting, we will do a attack path analysis, we will calculate an attack feasibility rating, and based on that, we will get a risk value determination. This is basically where we are going to start thinking about risk mitigation strategies. We'll dive into that when we debate TARA more in full. Okay, we have the goals, we have our item defined, and then what we need to do is to write our cybersecurity concept. So cybersecurity concept is like a sum of requirements describing the methods, or better said, the countermeasures that we use to mitigate the threat scenarios that we just recently identified. And these cybersecurity concept, we would go into the development. So when the either hardware developers or software developers will try to put them in practice, so that when the product is assembled, let's say, and it goes on the field, we are better protected. So we have defined what we need to do. Then we are going into the design and coding phase, where each of these countermeasure will be allocated to the components which are responsible to have it implemented. The implementation will go as a standard V-cycle implementation for software in automotive product, but will apply an additional set of rules and rigors specific to the cybersecurity relevant products. Once implementation is finished, we will pass into the integration and verification, in which we will assess all the subcomponents of our product to see if what we have put in place is a sufficient countermeasure, if it mitigates the risk down to a level that we can accept. After we do this verification and integration at component level, Our product, which would be, let's say, would consist in a subcomponent of another component or a subcomponent directly in the vehicle, would be integrated in the top level, and everything will go into a vehicle that is finally produced and sold. And at that level, at vehicle level only, it is performed the cybersecurity validation. So taking all the components from all the tier ones, tier twos, or even from the OEM, you put them together, you give it a test run, and you're checking if your cybersecurity goals are met, if all these components work fine together, and your assets are well protected. Okay, so this would be for the development side. Now, there are other actions and work products that needs to be considered while doing this. So it's not just writing a code, compiling a code, and testing a code. You have to perform a number of actions additionally when you consider cybersecurity. So you'll be having for sure a cybersecurity plan. Cybersecurity plan is a place where you will detail all your actions that will take place in order to ensure the consistency of cybersecurity countermeasures. And in the end, you would be issuing a document called cybersecurity case, which is um, a list of, let's say, evidences or a proof that all your actions that were prescribed in the plan occurred and produced desirable results. So you develop, you test it, and the tests are passed, because if they are failed, well, that's not good enough. You will have to rework something. There are additional things to consider. So as you already know or learned, um, a vehicle is not done by one entity, is done by a lot of entities which have to work together to bring everything together to the finite state. And because this is a complex thing, also when it comes to security, you need you don't leave anything to chance. All your interactions between all the interaction between customer and supplier are modeled in a cybersecurity interface agreement. So basically, this is like a handshake protocol in which each party is informed of the action that has to undertake in order that the whole is um, well designed and well secured from the cybersecurity point of view. Okay. Now, having said that, we will dive a little bit into the Tara. So we said, okay, we have an asset, we have defined its attributes. How do you know how will we react to things potentially going bad? So, as we said, in the first stage, there is an asset identification. So we have to consider each and every piece of information that manifests, as we had said in the beginning, at least one of the cybersecurity attribute. So if there is one cybersecurity attribute, this asset becomes cybersecurity relevant automatically. And on the one side, we will perform an impact rating. An impact rating is when well, what if this attribute gets compromised? Let's say the confidentiality of a key, the key is exposed, what would be the impact of it? So we're having the impact rating on the one side, and going on the other side, when considering the threat scenario through which this attribute was compromised, We are doing an analysis regarding the attack path, regarding the feasibility rating of that attack path. And by collaborating the feasibility rating and the impact rating, together you get a risk value determination. So it's like, what is the chance of happening, together with how hard do I get hit if this is happening. This gets you the risk. And depending on the risk, you would be deciding about the risk treatment decision, because of course, as the risk is higher, you will decide to put more countermeasures in place, whereas when the risk is lower, you may be choosing to ignore or accept this risk. Let's see how this risk is calculated. So as we saw before, the risk is a formula of probability and impact or severity. When you think of impact, the impact is generally categorized in 4 big chapters. It's about safety. It can be about financial loss. It can be an operational loss, so losing certain functionality of the asset or of the vehicle, if this is the case, or privacy. So when a data that is not supposed to get exposed, okay? And when you are considering probability has several formula for calculating it. It can be either a formula or of an elapsed time to perform the attack, the specialist expertise to perform the attack. Obviously, as you need a higher expertise to perform the attack, the chance of occurring decreases because the number of high experts is very low comparing to a guy having no expertise. Knowledge over the item or component. So the more information you need to know over the item or component to successfully conduct the attack, the less least chance is for this to succeed, because obviously the confidential and highly confidential information, you don't find it everywhere. Normal people don't have attack to it, so therefore the probability decreases. Window of opportunity. So if you're having just a couple of seconds to perform an attack, comparing to having all day long to perform the attack, of course, the lower window opportunity decreases the probability. And equipment, of course, the more specialized an equipment you need, expensive equipment you need to conduct this attack, of course, it's unlikely that this attack will occur because not everybody has the specialized equipment or the money to buy it. There are also alternative formulas for calculating this probability, but the idea is, if you're looking in the top right corner of the screen, you will see that if you are composing the high probability with high severity, you would be getting a high risk matrix, whereas if you go lower, you'll be having serious, medium with yellow, and green with low. What does this tell us? Well, it's simple. When the risk is judged as being low, most probably you would decide to ignore it. When the risk is medium, you may apply ignore, either do some tentative countermeasures. But whereas the risk is serious and high, for sure you'll be putting one or more countermeasures in place, because it means it either has a very high chance of occurring, either your impact is very consistent. Okay, so again, Once we are having this idea of the overall risk for each scenario, we can proceed to risk mitigation strategies. As we said earlier, countermeasure is one of the mitigation strategies, but there are many of, let's say, more lawyer nature. One of the strategies could be risk reduction, so the classical technical countermeasure. Another one could be risk sharing. So in this case, you are splitting the responsibility with the co-developer entities through cybersecurity interface agreements. Imagine if one entity develops and another entity tests. This would be a kind of risk sharing. So, well, if something bad happens, who's to blame? The one that developed poorly or the one that tested and did not discover it? So this is a sort of split responsibility. There is another one called risk transfer, meaning that the original producer does not take any ownership over any counteractions to mitigate the risk, but instead puts this risk on the shoulders of the user by simply informing him, issuing some claims and informing him of the counteractions that he needs to take by himself in order to protect himself. So uh, let's take a simple case. You have the car. You cannot necessarily know or do by software some action where you detect whether or not the owner is nearby or in the vehicle. You can simply issue the claim, look, dear owner, once you leave the vehicle, close it with your key, otherwise it can get stolen. Of course, there are um, um, more elaborate locking mechanisms where they sense an approaching key of the owner and the car's locks or unlocks himself, but this is for premium vehicles or more expensive ones. So this is taken care by the system, but in some cases the risk transfer is on the shoulders of the owner, who is requested to protect himself by locking the door. And the very last one, which you probably heard me mentioning it when the risk is low, it's risk acceptance. This means you accept this risk either because the chances of happening it is very low, or because the impact is very small, or both. I will give you an example. So in terms of to get a very polarized idea over risk and impact, do consider, for instance, a meteorite striking the Earth. Okay, a big meteorite having a catastrophic impact. You see, the impact is huge, it's catastrophic, everybody dies, end of story. But as the chances of that happening is, as per now, considered extremely low, even if the impact is high, humanity decides to do absolutely nothing about it because, again, the chances of that is very low. Therefore, the risk is considered in the low, therefore negligible, therefore accepted. Yeah, as simple as that. But, well, this is all that you see here. All this discussion happens in the context that you know precisely when and how your component is going to be used. But there is another situation which I don't know if was immediately obvious to you guys. The other situation is called out of context. What is this out of context? Out of context is when the original producer of the component is doing this component with a purpose in mind, of course, but he cannot know for sure later on where and how this component is going to be integrated. What is the nature of the environment where it's going to be integrated? So this makes the Tara analysis difficult. So what you're going to do, what you're going to put in place, will a certain risk be possible or not? You don't know. Therefore, in NXP, when this situation occurs, NXP is trying to model this risk through defining three types of environment. One is called friendly environment, where it's about mostly consists mostly just by remote software attacks. Then it will be the potentially hostile environment where you have to care about software and hardware attacks, let's say of moderate complexity, and you're having adverse environment um, that is very likely that you get attacked by very specialized hardware or software hackers. So you are having these environments, and in these environments, uh, the product that you're developing um, will be attached or a certain environment, and only one would be considered for your product in the design. Therefore, especially when you are using your product uh, outside your or the designated environment, this becomes a cybersecurity risk. Yeah, and these environments, you generally model them or uh, through an attacker profile. So behind the hostile or friendly or advanced, it's a modeling of certain types of attacker profiles. And if you consider an attacker profile, as you see in this picture, there are several elements that capture their attention. The first one is the budget. What budget has the attacker? Because with that budget, he can buy increasingly performant tools. What are its limitation, for instance? So what can he do, what he cannot do in terms of knowledge and the tools he has? What are his skills? So out of, let's say, more or less standardized attack capabilities, what are the skills that he is able to successfully attack your product with? What is the equipment, of course, based on the budget that it has, and what are the methods, the hacking methods that he can put it in place with the skills and the tools that we had. And when you take all these profiles and you map them to the environments, you are getting these clearer pictures where, let's say, the less competent with low on budget hackers go into the friendly environment, the more complex the attacks and the more complex the tools, and of course the increased budget, you go into a potentially hostile environment or in an adverse environment. Generally, uh, the vehicles are judged to have potentially hostile environments. So we do not go into the extreme with adverse environment, but we do not consider them either suited for friendly environment. They go somewhere in the potentially hostile environment. So this is about about how we model and when this development is out of context. But if you remember the first topics that we discussed, we also said, well, besides the activities that you undertake for the sake of a project or a product in itself, you also need to have some continual activities at governance level. Why you need to do that? Because, as we mentioned, some attacks may apply to your product or your type of products, or maybe it already happened on the market, or it had happened to a competitor that had a product similar to your own. Therefore, NXP and all companies that take cybersecurity seriously, they have continuous cybersecurity monitoring. What does this mean? It means you are having your ear on the market. You are searching for all white hat, black hat attacks that occurred. You need these are named or considered cybersecurity events, regardless if they were successful or not. That's another story. But you would be doing an event evaluation. So maybe it did not happen to you, it happened to somebody else, but you need to say, okay, if I would have been in its place, would I be vulnerable? Would this attack that occurred successfully or unsuccessfully on a competitor, would that impact on me? And then this is the moment when you're doing a vulnerability analysis based on the attacker profile and based on your interfaces and countermeasure that you have put in place. And based on this analysis, you may end up or reach the conclusion that you may or may not have to do something about it. And this is called vulnerability management. Maybe you decide, okay, this event does not impact me at all, or you say this event may impact me severely. Let me do a quick software update and distribute it on the market so that my customers will not be potentially impacted. Okay, so this is what or was all that is covered by the project development and continual activities. But now let's have a little look at what makes automotive world a little bit special, and this is a thing called supply chain. And the problem is, especially the problem is that this supply chain is very long. Um, as you see in this picture, well, you're having an OEM that intends to build and sell a vehicle, but mostly none of the OEMs, at least none that I know of, are capable of developing the vehicle top to bottom with their own resources. So they are splitting these vehicles in what it is called items, which items are nothing more, nothing less than general functionalities, which are maybe appointed to a tier one supplier, which further breaks down these functionalities, which generally it's a network of ECUs. It splits them into components, and these components are either developed by tier one, either subcontracted to a tier two, which tier two in itself may buy some sub-components from some specialized supplier. So as you see, this chain is at least 3 levels deep. It can go even deeper to 4 or 5, depending on the complexity or novelty of the item. So you see, when you consider cybersecurity, this becomes complicated because all these entities, OEM tier 1 and tier 2, have to interact very strictly, know exactly their boundaries and their responsibilities, what everybody has to do. And when you're considering the picture I just showed you, you realize that you landed into distributed development. It's a development where different entities, different companies work to achieve a common goal. However, each acts on its own. Therefore, the interfaces between them become critical. And now you are having three situations. One, you're having distributed development where the two companies know themselves, had handshakes in the form of cybersecurity interface agreements, clearly norming cybersecurity action, who's the owner, who has to perform, who has to give the results. This is the, let's say, the happiest situation of all. Then you may have the development out of context that we mentioned before, meaning, well, we have a company that develops it, there's another company that potentially buys that component and integrates it into a higher level component, but without the first company knowing about that. And in this case, the communication about the responsibilities for cybersecurity actions occurs through the form of claims and assumption. So the company that develops the component out of context will make claims and assumption towards the user. So the user knows that you'd have to do this action, you'd have to test in this way, you'd have to use my product in a certain environment, so on and so forth. And the last situation, which unfortunately still occurs on the market, is called off-the-shelf component. Off-the-shelf component you can think of in terms of legacy components. Are components that were developed long ago without any maintenance or capability to alter them, to update them, to bring them to nowadays. They are frozen in times with the quality standard that were 10, 15 years ago, nothing to do about it, but nevertheless you have to use it. So in this situation, what happens is that the company that is integrated is forced to integrate this component, needs to make no assumption. The company knows that it has no guarantee over the cybersecurity prowess of the shelf component that it integrates, and instead it will try probably to build a protective wrapper around it and make some tests to see if the protective wrapper is sufficient as to use the component but still reach a certain level of security that is appropriate for nowadays. Yeah, so this is the kind of relations that may be between supplier and customer. And in the light of these potential interactions, the standard ISO 11434 norms a number of requirements that need to be fulfilled both by supplier and both by customer in order to ensure that the chain of security is maintained from supplier to customer. So the supplier shall be able to provide a demonstration of capabilities to perform post-development activities according to the standard ISO 11434, and also a record of organization capability concerning cybersecurity. So the supplier needs to prove that he is able to handle cybersecurity, in other words. On the other side, the customer needs to provide towards the supplier a clear formal request to comply with this standard, because, well, otherwise the supplier would not know that he needs to nor would he maybe invest in certain aspects in order to comply with the standard. To clearly state the expected responsibilities and deliverables that supplier needs to provide, and also to set the supplier with a set of goals and requirements that he needs to fulfill with his product. Once this has occurred, well, it seems just like simple phrases, but besides these phrases are huge energies involved in order to make sure that you really have accomplished this. Once this is set, the relation can occur between supplier and customer, and the cybersecurity, well, let's say it has great chances of being fulfilled. And um, as a last overview, so to see exactly how all this situation aggregates into, you will see at the bottom level the vehicle that would need to be developed. At item level, you would be having yourself the item definition, of course, that we need for cybersecurity's sake. You would be having a cybersecurity plan at item level, cybersecurity case at item level, cybersecurity requirement. So all the work products deemed necessary by the ISO 21434 standard, you'll be having an item level. And then depending on the capabilities of your supplier or the situation it is we are situated into, the type of relation we have with the supplier, we either are in the distributed development case in which we have a cybersecurity interface agreement. So the tier 1 at item level clearly states what is expected in terms of cybersecurity actions from its supplier. Or you may be in the situation out of context, where, as you see, there is no interface because, simply put, the supplier does not know what the tier 1 or its customer eventually is going to do or is going to buy his product and how to use it. Case in which the development happens independently, and then a set of assumptions it's issued towards the potential customer, and the customer, when integrating its component, has to validate the assumption against the realities of its product. And lastly, the situation with off the shelf, where there is absolutely no relevant documentation, cybersecurity is to be considered inexistent. Therefore, the tier 1 or the OEM or the integrator, in one word, would have to take all the needed steps to mitigate the risk induced by having to integrate a component that is not cybersecurity compliant. Unfortunately, it happens from time to time, but we cannot close our eyes. Actions have to be taken. So that was it from the point of view of the supply chains. And I would like to also thank you for your attention. Hopefully some elements caught your attention, and if there are any questions, I am available to answer them now, or maybe my contact it later. I can also reply through some emails.